took the 2025 examination, out of about 1,955,069 candidates, only about 420,000 candidates scored above 200. That's just about 21.42%, which means about 78.52% actually failed the examination. A lot of Nigerians have raised concerns about, the standard of education in Nigeria. Raised concerns about the performance of students at the last Joint Admissions Matriculations Board examination called the UTME, the Unified Tertiary Matriculations Examination. Interestingly, the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, came out, to say that students actually failed because they have better anti-cheating mechanisms to prevent students from cheating. Trying to, praise JAM for putting in place, measures to, stop students from cheating. And of course, Nigerians have been reacting to that. Should we be concerned about the standard of education in Nigeria, or should we be clapping for the minister who claims that they are doing their job? That's why the students are failing. Joining us on the conversation this morning is an educationist, Mrs. Omigbodu, also a proprietor. Good morning, madam. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Absolutely. Madam, how would you react to the recent data released by JAM concerning the performance of students at the last concluded examination? Over 78% failed that examination. What is your concern as a proprietor, as someone in the education sector? What does that say about the state of education in Nigeria? And also, looking at the claims of the Minister of Education, do you agree with that line of thought of his?
Thank you very much. Well, as an educational stakeholder, I'm also holding my breath, waiting for the release, the final upload of those results. We haven't seen them in real time, but we have seen the statistics. And it's very interesting to note that when you compare the statistics of 2024 and this year, last year and this year, there's not much of a difference, really. The only difference this time around is that statistics have been released before the upload of the exam scores earlier this year than last year. Last year, we had the statistics come after, and so there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of interest in those statistics. If we look at the statistics, last year, students that scored below 200 were 76%. This year, it's 76%. Now, those that scored between 200 and 249, last year, we had 24%. This year, we have 17.1%. There's a slight difference. Okay. And then for the other statistics, 300 and above, for instance, we have a slight improvement this year. We have a 0.6% of candidates getting above 300. Last year, it was 0.5%. So there's not much of a difference per se, in the results. The only thing we have is an early release of statistics, than we did last year. So we have work to do as educational stakeholders. The standard of education is we have to be ever concerned about the standard of education any year at all. It's not something we say, the statistics are out, our standards dropping. We should be concerned about standards all the time. Okay, and it's important that we note that many of our candidates, there's a lot of work for us to do, those of us who are in the educational sector, to prepare these students adequately. There's a lot on our table. The buck, comes back to us.
All right, Mrs. Omigbodu. However, the Minister of Education does not seem to be concerned about the standard of education. According to him, the reason why we had massive failure is that anti-cheating, measures have improved. What do you say to that?
I'm going to have to correct the Minister of Education. You see, there were no special measures put in place this year that were not there last year. Last year, they had enhanced biometric verification. They had deployment of CCTV surveillance. They trained the exam officials. They had strict adherence to exam protocols, the same as this year. So really, there was no special measure put in place for the UTMEs. However, there are special measures going to be put in place for the WAEC examinations this year. We all know that there will be customized papers and so on and so forth. Okay, but for JAMB, not really. There was not much of a difference. So I'm not sure I understand the minister's standpoint on saying that there were improved measures. I really don't. I stand to be corrected.
All right. As an educationist yourself, Ma, what would you say is particularly responsible for the failure of students over the years? We're talking about the fact that this is in relation to what Peter Obi said, past governor of Anambra. What is said about the fact that there is a deteriorating situation in our education system. Do you agree with that? Or what would you say particularly is responsible for the failure, mass failure of students now in the education sector?
Well, from time, we've always had reasons to have to go back to the drawing table to ensure that, we have quality learners. I must say that inadequate preparation is the major cause of failure. Inadequate preparation. And there's a need to also go back and do some research. We have students who are very much inclined to use, to be addicted to technology, to be distracted by technology. And we really need to have the research data. We need to have the data out to see what is the effect of these distractions on learner performance. Okay, there's a need for us to go back to the drawing table and look at the average Nigerian learner, okay, and the distractions that are preventing them from being adequately prepared for examinations. The Minister of Education said, we have improved technology. I must say that technology has been the major vehicle for cheating in most of our external exams in Nigeria. So we need to go back to the drawing table and do the proper research and get out the necessary parameters that are responsible for student failure. Majorly, I believe it's inadequate preparation. And then we also have technological glitches that may come up from time to time. It's interesting to note that last year there were very few infractions related to the exam. But this year we have 2,157 students being investigated for malpractice this year. Last year they had near zero infractions. So we really need to go back and do the proper research. We don't have the adequate information yet. We need to go back and do proper research.
But let's talk about some deep-rooted problems now, like Peter Obi said about underinvesting in the education sector. Do we really have competent hands in the education sector now, especially tertiary institution? Do we have competent hands? Apart from competent hands, do we have people who are still driven by passion for this, for their students? Talking about emoluments now or benefits coming to the teachers. Do you think that they still have to drive the passion? And do you think there are not other deep-rooted problems that may be affecting students apart from preparedness?
Yes, it's. I believe the problems that affect pupil learner performance is multidimensional. We need to look at every aspect. Yes, I do agree that motivated teachers would impact their students and their learners better than inadequately rewarded teachers. So yes, I agree with that. And then it's important that we do a lot of, we have more investments in education. I don't have the statistics now. I do not have the data on what the budget for education is for this year. But I believe that we can always do better. And passion is something that is, should I say this? But I will say it. Passion is something that we, in teaching and in education, is something that we have to really work hard on. Why do I say so? People have there are easier means of getting rich. There get better, more rewarding systems out there. It's better to be a politician earning big bucks than to be in the class teaching and slaving away, in a learning environment. I'm sorry to say to make those comparisons, but it's the truth. So we do need to motivate our teachers. We do need to motivate stakeholders in the education sector. We do need to do more in that area. There is no doubt about it, But I must say that there are still passionate people out there. There are still passionate teachers out there doing their best to ensure that our learners are prepared, but we need to do more.
All right, Mrs. Oyinkan Omigbodun. So looking at the root cause of the mass failure in JAMB in Nigeria, like you rightly mentioned, it is multifaceted. Now, let's look at the big picture here. You are an educationist. Let us consider some of the factors that might be responsible for this mass failure. For instance, madam, how do you see the standard of education, secondary school education in Nigeria? Would it be that the standard has dropped seriously? You talked about, motivating the teachers. You talked about their remuneration. The question is, what is the quality of teachers we have at secondary school level in Nigeria? Is it really attractive to be a teacher, a high school teacher or secondary school, as we call it here in Nigeria? Is it attractive to be a secondary school teacher in Nigeria? So who are those we are living teaching to in Nigeria? Okay. Do we have the best brains? Okay. Before, I just wanted to paint a picture so that you react. Do we have the best brains in teaching in Nigeria? That's number one. Let's look at another factor. Still talking about the root cause of failure here. Let's look at the students. Are they well prepared for the examination? Now we are talking about the CBT. What if some students are not yet familiar with the use of the computers, with the use of CBT? Some of them might actually be smart. They might actually know what they do. But what if there were some other technical challenges? I mean, what about network? I mean, all these factors that play out, we need to look at that as well. Now, then again, some students are from rural areas. How are they coping with the new system, with the CBT? These are some of the factors we should look at when we talk about the root cause of the failure, of mass failure in JAMB examination. What's your take on that? I'm talking about the teachers, the quality of education in secondary schools, the CBT, our students are adapting to it. Or is it that how about the examination questions? Are they becoming more difficult? Are they too tough for the students? A whole lot of factors we need to look at.
Yes, I agree with you. There are a whole lot of factors. That's why I said we need to go back and do the research. We need to go back and look at our parameters. We need to go back and look at the questions. Were they more difficult this year than the previous years? We need to do we need to do due diligence to answering those questions. Now, on the issue of quality of teachers, it's a huge task. It is easier, and it is not easier. Let me say easier. It is more attractive for teachers to want to japa, to leave the system and go to other climes where they are better rewarded for their work. The fact is that teaching is not less. It is not easier anywhere else. Teaching is a very, very tough job anywhere else in the world. But if teachers are motivated and encouraged, and they're they are encouraged to improve on their qualifications, they will be better in the classrooms. What we see now is that there is a dearth of quality teachers in most institutions of learning nowadays, particularly in the private sector. Okay, it may be more attractive for teachers to do other things other than teaching. So it's important that we incentivize teachers and those who opt to study education in the universities. Okay, now, for instance, let me digress a bit. Instead of having loans, student loans, why don't we focus on providing qualitative free education for students at the tertiary level? Now, I'm going back to say that it's important to incentivize those who venture into the education sector. In my days, it was not attractive to read education, to study education. You were called all kinds of derogatory names, such as asoso and so on and so forth. But if we incentivize, for instance, I noticed that there were some programs to incentivize people opting to study agriculture. You can do the same for education, and inspire people to study education. Give them discounts, give them free tuition if you can, and pick the best of the best. The fact is that for education, you get the worst of the worst in most cases. Sometimes when as a private sector person, if I have to do interviews for 50, I'll pick 2 out of 50 because of the quality of NCE holders, quality of BA holders, B.Ed holders. They cannot piece together sentences in English. It's a headache, really. And we can do better. Now, for the CBT, whether we like it or not, the world is good. Paradigms are going to shift globally. They will keep shifting, and we must keep adapting. So there's no saying, oh, the rural people, how are they going to? We're going to have to scale up our infrastructure. We're going to have to put our money where our mouth is. If the Minister of Education is talking about CBT by November 2025, then we have to put money where our mouth is. We have to provide the necessary infrastructure. And I laugh because I'm just wondering, my head is saying, why about Band A electricity bills? That's another level. We have to do the necessary homework to ensure that these systems truly work. But what I foresee is that many of those in the rural areas will have to come and have scheduled exams in the urban centers for now, until they're able to scale up their infrastructure. That's what I can see. I don't know, have I skipped any aspect of the questioning? I think I've spoken about
the last aspect is talking about the questions themselves, the examination questions.
Yes,
are they being modulated properly? Are they becoming tougher?
Yes, like I said, we do have to do the research. We have to go back to the drawing table. We have to assess the questions. We have to look at our curriculum and our curriculum delivery to see that, are we delivering in this regard? We need to do that research. We don't have the figures yet. We don't have the research outcomes yet. We need to do that. Yeah.
All right, Ma, what's going forward now? The failures happened. What do you think are going to be the consequences of this failure on students, on the universities, on the broader education system generally? What will be the consequences?
Well, lowered cutoff marks for starters. We're going to have some very interesting cutoff marks this year. For instance, in previous times, we would have quality universities saying we won't take students who score less than 200. There may be changes this year. Let's wait and see. And I foresee also that many students may be cut off admissions this year because of that performance. If the universities decide, okay, we're not lowering our cutoff marks, then it means we'll have fewer candidates admitted, into these universities. So that's what I see. And I see those students going off into maybe polytechnics and other institutions of education that can absorb them. So those are some of the consequences I foresee.
All right, Mrs. Omigbodun, let's look at our educational system at this time. Do you think that our system right now is really more concerned about students passing exams rather than learning? Because those are two different things. Are we really focusing on what the students are learning, or is it just about passing examinations and outcomes of examinations? Conducting examinations and, marking, rating them and passing examination. What should we be focused on more at this time? Are we really concerned about what the students are learning? Let's look at the curriculum. Okay, what are the students learning in the first place? Should we give more importance to learning or passing of examinations?
Well, for now, there's a lot of work to do in that area. There's a lot of work to do. When we compare ourselves with other developed climes, we see that there's a lot that we need to do to scale up, the quality of education we're providing. Somebody once said that, our curriculum is designed to produce people who would work in the ministries, and so on, that it's an offshoot of colonialism and all that. Well, it behooves on us now to go back and draw up a curriculum that will, position our learners for the 21st century. I know that there were some interventions in times past where we had introducing trade subjects. We want children to have hands-on experience in things like photography, animal husbandry, catering crafts, and so on. But if you go to the schools now, you will see that we have gone back to our usual ways of rote learning, and memorization, and then what we call in Yoruba, agberu. You cram, you deliver, you pass, and you move on. But the practical aspects are lacking, very much so. Why? Because of the investments that we have, failed to do in infrastructure, period. That's just it. So you have, you can't teach photography if you do not have cameras and high quality. These things are not cheap, So there's a lot that we need to do to upgrade the hands-on aspect of education. Most of what we do today is rote learning. We cram, and then we deliver what we've crammed, we pass, and we move on. If you ask those learners 2-3 years afterwards what they learned, they cannot really articulate, because they were groomed to cram and, answer questions, pass, and move on. So this is my take on that.
All right. Looking at the educational system in Nigeria, in your opinion, as an educationist and also a proprietor, what reforms would you recommend to the Ministry of Education to implement at this point to curb mass failures in examinations, in public examinations in Nigeria?
I'm excited about that question. The first thing I'm going to talk about is adequate stakeholder engagement. A lot of decisions made in the education sector are made without the input of the, major stakeholders. And that is where things, when you have seasoned educationists, experienced hands sitting at a table to brainstorm about the movement, the progress of education in the country, you will have better results, But what we get is that we just wake up in the morning and then we switch on our radios and we're informed that, there's a policy change. And we're like, excuse me, from where did this come from? So I think that we should start with adequate stakeholder engagement. Very, very critical. We must have a robust think tank thinking about the issues that affect education. Very, very important. I'm going to start from there. And then, of course, we're going to have to invest heavily in education, both for private and public institutions. Okay, we must invest heavily in education if we're really serious as a country at all. We must invest.
All right, but now please hold that thought. We'll go on a break right now. When we return, you'll continue with that line of thoughts. Please stay with us.
Thank
Thank you for staying with us. This is Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. We've been talking about the education sector in Nigeria. Concerns about mass failure, recent mass failure in the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board examination. And we've been speaking with Mrs. Oyinkan Omigbondu, an educationist and a school proprietor. Thank you for staying with us, Mrs. Omigbondu.
Thank you for having me.
Before we went on that break, you were talking about some of the recommendations that you have for the Ministry of Education to curb the mass failures we are currently experiencing in Nigeria. So I'd like you to please continue with that line of thought.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. So I did talk about ensuring that we put our money where our mouth is, ensuring that we invest heavily in the education sector, and see a commitment. And then I want to also, with due respect, we need to have square pegs in square holes or round pegs in round holes. I want to sincerely appeal to our politicians. When we are selecting those who are to be in sensitive positions in the education sector, they should be seasoned educationists. With due respect to the Minister of Education, he is a doctor, and I know he will be a medical doctor, and he'll be most passionate about medical matters, much more than those related to education. I beg to make this observation. So it's important to have round pegs and round holes in the education sector. Very, very.
So sorry to cut in. You're saying basically that the current Minister of Education is not traditionally an educationist.
Not traditionally. He's a medical doctor. He's a medical personnel. He's a medical doctor. And I would say that we would be better off with seasoned educationists in such an office.
All right, so at what level now do you want to say that there is a failure, a particular failure in education? Is it at the formative years, or is it at the tertiary, institution? Taking a look, an appraisal now of education generally in Nigeria as a school, proprietor yourself, what levels as failure or decadence in education really setting?
Well, I would, like I said, there are many reasons and for the kind of results that we get every year. And we do need to go back to the drawing table and find out what the root causes. So at every level, I would like us to point our attention to the curriculum. Curriculum, is it adequate? Many private institutions do not fully or totally rely on the Nigerian curriculum. That's the truth of the matter. Many of us have enhanced curricula. We take from this place, that place, we mix everything together. We look at what we feel is best for our learners.
Okay.
So we may need to visit our curriculum and look at how we teach. I'm so excited about something that I discovered recently. I found out that there was a young man who took it upon himself to write a textbook in Yoruba for chemistry. Fantastic.
Whoa.
That would be very useful at the rural levels. So we must go back and look at how we teach. Okay, the essence of education is critical consciousness, knowing where we are now, knowing, where we are going and how to go get there. We cannot use the methodology of yesteryears. For now, we need to be proactive, and go back to the drawing table and say, okay, can we begin to teach chemistry in our rural areas, in our local languages? Let us do this. Now, imagine this is a private initiative by a young man who is just passionate. What are the parastatals who are supposed to do these things doing about it? I dare say that if the stakeholders at that level are not interested in what that young man has done, it will just be a walk in vain, very sadly. But if they're able to go back to the drawing and say, oh, this young man has done something interesting, let's invite him. He's a stakeholder. Let's invite him and let's see what we can do to invite other people like him who can help us to enhance the way we teach, our teaching delivery, our teaching methodologies, So these are things that we can do. These are things that we can do.
This your point now brings me to this other question. What disparity, as a well-traveled educationist, what disparities in your travels have you found between our own education sector and other climes? How backwards are we? How far gone are those other climes? What could we do, to fill up that gap or to step up our game?
We're not backwards.
Okay.
When our learners actually get into such climes, they excel. They become the best of the best. So it only means that there's just a little bit of tweaking that we need to do here and there to ensure that we are at the top of our game internationally. It's not that the quality of the Nigerian learner is so poor. We only require to do the necessary research to get us, to the apex and help us to compete, at certain levels internationally. So I won't say that we're that backward or that poor. We only need to do the necessary
all right.
table work. Yes.
All right, Mrs. Omigbodu, from your experience as an educationist and also as a proprietor, you mentioned just some minutes ago that you've had experience interviewing teachers, that you are shocked at the quality of teachers you see. Okay, that most of them can't even, make good sentences in English language, which is quite worrisome. You also made a recommendation. You said incentivization when they are well paid, that it will attract, you know, more people. I mean, people who are intelligent into the profession. Talking about the teaching profession. But in your opinion, apart from incentivization, what can we do? What can be done to attract the best brains into teaching? Because unfortunately, as it is right now, the real intelligent ones are not going into teaching in Nigeria. So what more can we do, you know, to encourage them to go into teaching? And I'll give you an example. I have a case, a friend of mine actually, very intelligent, graduated with first class. He was retained as a graduate assistant. Okay, he was best graduating student from the Faculty of Science. He was retained there, but after a while, he left. Today, he's a researcher, he's a scientist in Canada. A lot of them like that. They can't stay. They don't want to stay because they feel it is not attractive to be a teacher in Nigeria. So what else do you think can be done just to attract the best brains into the profession?
I'm laughing a bit because it boils down to incentivization. Absolutely. Okay, why did he go to Canada? Okay, he would be better remunerated. That's the fact of the matter. Yes, we know that, okay, the environment will be more conducive, blah, 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 but the major thing is incentivization. If you're able to inspire me to go to school to study education and you help me with my fees, that's incentivization. If after I finish, after 4 years, a job is waiting for me, well paid, you know, with the necessary equipment, the correct environment, they in fact would have too many people running to study education and stay in the education sector. So incentivization, and God help us, public, private stakeholders. It's a big task.
All right, you said it all, incentivization. I actually thought we could actually have maybe some other things we can do, because the government will tell you that, okay, what is the budget for education in Nigeria? If you talk about incentivization, it boils down to what the federal government is committing to that sector. Do you think that the federal government of Nigeria is doing enough in that regard? Because for us to come down to incentivization to increase their remuneration, it has to start from policy making. Okay, so do you think we have those policies, or what else should we be doing at this point?
The federal government needs to make education attractive by putting enough into, you know, the educational, the budget for education every year. Once they do that, you know, everybody is informed that, oh, you know, there's a policy shift. There's a change in the priorities of government. Government is really looking at, you know, ensuring that there's a change in education. See how much they have put in this, you know. And then not only do they put the money there, they supervise and ensure that the money is properly used for the purposes and the objectives for which that money has been budgeted. You know, once that is done and education is seen as priority by the government, every other person will catch on. And then you would have public and private partnership initiatives as well. It will become attractive for private organizations to also, you know, put something in education once they see that the federal government is committed to making changes there.
All right, madam. In response to a question my colleague asked you earlier, whether we are backward in Nigeria or not, you said we are not actually educationally backward. But my question is this: how do you then describe the fact that what we are having in Nigeria, where we have graduates who are not well suited for jobs, okay, for the job market? Is there a disjoint, or where is the disjoint coming from? Because when people graduate from school, there's always this disjoint. Organizations will tell you that most graduates are not employable. So when they employ them, they have to train them. For instance, let's look at the banking sector. When you go to school, you study, and it doesn't really matter what you study, okay? As long as you can read and write and you are smart enough, the banking sector will train you to do their job. So it seems, yes, and I'm just using that as an example. It happens in a lot of other industries. So where is this joint coming from? Most professionals believe that what they are teaching in school is not really what is needed in the labor market. So what do you say to that? Where is it disjoint coming from if we are not educationally backward?
Thank you very much. You know, I talked about curriculum, going back to check out our curriculum and upskilling where we need to upskill. Okay, it's important that certain skills, there are certain 21st century skills that our learners need to be able to qualify to work in the for the work market of now. You know, so those skills are what we need to look at our curriculum. Are we doing enough in this department? Okay, AI is a thing now. It's a major paradigm shift. How have we incorporated artificial intelligence into our curriculum? Have we, you know, done the necessary homework to ensure that our students and our learners, you know, are prepared for the world of AI? That's just an example. So we need to prepare them. There's a disjoint in skills. Yes, definitely. And we need to look at our curriculum and tailor our curriculum such that those skills our students acquire. And then I want to talk about industrial attachment. It is so critical. It is so important that students, learners have hands-on practical experiences, you know, that prepare them for work life. Okay, and when I say work life, it's social, it's skills-wise, it's far-reaching. So if we have proper industrial attachments, you know, meaningful ones, then we would have some improvements in this area.
Well, before I ask my major question, let's talk about that industrial attachment. Should it be for only tertiary institutions now, or it should be introduced at the primary and secondary levels?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
I said the industrial attachment you spoke of just now.
Okay. Yes.
Should it be just at the tertiary level where we have it now, or it should be introduced at other basic levels of education?
As a private institution, we're going to experiment on some things this year. Okay. I have decided, for instance, that my 9th graders, children in the in GSS 3, who will soon be writing the examinations, once they conclude, what would you like to be? Oh, I'd like to be, let me see, a broadcaster. You know, I'd like to be a journalist. Okay, so we are going to go to Rave FM for 2 weeks. They're not going to pay you any money because I'm not sure they have. Okay, but you would have some experience, you know, relating with those who are on the job. And then you can decide, I'm not sure I'm cut out to be a broadcaster after all. You know, let me consider something else. So what am I saying in essence? Your experiences should be from, if possible, from the preschool. Okay? Not just, okay, we get to the university and then we're sent out on IT. No, let the children have experiences from when they're very little, as little as 5. Yeah, I believe in that. Take them out. Okay, this is a hospital. That's a doctor. You know, look at that man. He's a so-and-so. And, you know, before you know it, you are painting pictures on the minds of the children, and it is going to help them to make decisions. Just let me just quickly say this concerning AI. I mentioned AI, and there's something in my spirit that is just not refusing to leave. You know, I read a piece of news that a mother actually sold a parcel of land to get her son to get trained in Yahoo. You know, these are issues. Can you imagine that? So with AI, if we don't have a curriculum that is, you know, training young people to use the positive aspects of AI, they will learn the negative ones.
All right, thank you so much, Mrs. Monica Migbado. We really wish we could take more questions, but unfortunately, we really have to go now. Thank you so much, Mrs. Monica Migbado, for joining us on the conversation this morning.
Thank you for
and thanks to you, our viewers. Thank you so much once again. Thank you for staying with us. It's been a wonderful conversation. We really wish we could drag it further, but we have to go now. Emeka Daniel is my name. Please join us for a fresh edition of Morning Spring on Western Spring Television tomorrow. And don't forget, you can check out this conversation on YouTube and our social media handles on Western Spring Television. Emeka Daniel is my name. Good morning and have a wonderful day.
Temitope Ajijolonwola is my name. See you tomorrow.